What's the most unforgivable secret you've discovered about your partner? Me and my girlfriend Alexa have been together for 3 years. We attended her brother George's wedding a few days ago. We and a few of our friends were at the same table later at the venue. Turns out my girlfriend's half-sister Rachel was invited and was assigned to the same table as my girlfriend and I. I have to note that Rachel is my mother-in-law's daughter. She had right before she had Alexa and then completely abandoned Rachel with her dad to live her life with Alexa's dad. They hadn't found out about Rachel's existence until my mother-in-law confessed to George that she had a daughter before them. So George reached out and found Rachel and she was happy to maintain a relationship with them, but Alexa was completely against it and didn't even want to meet her. That's why Rachel and Alexa don't get along. That was 4 years back. I also have to say that I have met Rachel and we got along well. Since Rachel didn't know anyone else at the wedding, George put her at the same table as me and Alexa and our friends. The second Alexa saw her, her mood changed. She kept throwing little innocent insults at her and then said she was just joking. Rachel didn't really seem to mind until Alexa said, "So, Rachel, how's your dad?" I almost lost it then. Rachel's dad passed when she was 15 years old and everyone knew. Rachel didn't say anything but just looked at her with an almost pitiful look. She then excused herself and went to get a drink. I turned to Alexa and told her that if she didn't stop being a tramp and didn't apologize, I would leave her right there and then. Alexa got defensive, saying that I was defending Rachel because I'm attracted to her and that I wanted to give her a pity bang because she's the poor orphan. She said all that in front of everyone. I ignored her for the rest of the night, and when it was time to leave I left her at home and went to sleep at my house. I hadn't talked to Alexa much after the wedding because I was still very mad about her behavior. I stayed at my house and avoided her calls and attempts to contact me in any way. She came to my house twice but I didn't answer the door. I wanted to think. I went to her house this morning and asked her to talk. She started apologizing to me for what she said, but I told her that I'm not the one she should apologize to. She realized what I meant and stopped talking. I kept going, and I told her that it was over between us and to never call me again. She started freaking out and said that she would apologize to Rachel if it meant I didn't break up with her. I agreed, knowing that I would leave her even if she apologized because she was only doing so in return that I stayed. Still, I wanted to hear her apologizing because it was fair to Rachel. She called Rachel right there and then, and after a while, Rachel picked up. Alexa started telling her how she was sorry for what she said, and that it had been eating her up for the past few days and she couldn't sleep. Lies, and from what I saw Rachel knew she was lying. I don't think Rachel even cared to hear an apology since she just said a simple okay and hung up. Alexa turned to me and asked me, "Are you happy now?" I wasn't, and I told her. I turned to leave and told her that I'd come to pick up my stuff while she was at work. She started freaking out and screaming at me about how I tricked her into apologizing to an impure person and that it's not her fault her mother went around making mistakes before she had her, and how there's a reason Rachel was left by her mother. At that moment I knew that whoever was in front of me wasn't the same person I fell in love with. I just left. She's been calling me for hours at a time but I blocked her. Rachel called too, to ask if I was still alive since she learned from George that I had broken up with Alexa. I told her that it was good riddance and apologized again for the wedding incident. She once again told me that it was not my fault, so I don't have to apologize. I'm quite happy, to be honest, and it's not like I'll miss the toxicity. Tomorrow I have a date with Rachel. I wasn't invited to my brother's wedding because I'm gay. Absolute chaos ensued. My brother's wedding happened 2 days ago. And it turned into complete chaos, which I know even though I wasn't there. You might wonder why I didn't attend the wedding if it was my brother's. Well, it's because of his wife's family. He did send me an invitation to the wedding because he wanted me there, but his fiancée told him I couldn't attend because I had a boyfriend. She said even though she doesn't have a problem with it and he doesn't have a problem with it, her extremely religious parents, who already forced her to do the wedding in a church, would most likely banish us from the wedding. And cause trouble between our families. You might think I was angry about the situation, but the truth is I was relieved. I hate going to big events with lots of people because of my social anxiety. I already was used to not being able to attend certain events because of my sexuality, so it was nothing I hadn't heard before. So on the day of the wedding, I stayed at home with my boyfriend. It's worth mentioning my parents apparently didn't know I wasn't attending the wedding. I was just chilling at home cuddling with my boyfriend when I suddenly got a text message from my parents asking me where I was. I told them I wasn't attending the wedding and asked them if they'd spoken to my brother about it. They said no and asked me what happened. I didn't see any reason to lie, so I sent them a text message telling them exactly why. Now I have to admit, I don't exactly know what happened after I sent them this message because they read it but didn't reply. And why did they care in the first place? They didn't notice I wasn't there until the wedding was already over. Apparently, my parents talked to my brother about it and all of a sudden my absence was the main topic of the wedding party. From what I heard, two fronts formed. On the one hand, my parents and the rest of my family were against the family of my brother's wife, and apparently he as a husband now felt compelled to take her side and tried to argue in her favor. It's crazy to think that I was just sitting at home living my best life with my boyfriend while all of that stuff went down on his wedding. The wedding party was ruined and my brother appeared at my door angrily screaming at me about why I felt the need to ruin his wedding. I was confused and asked him what happened and he told me everything. I told him it wasn't my intention. I just told our parents what happened because they didn't know and wanted to know where I was. He then continued to scream at me for ruining his wedding. I told him it was not my fault that he wasn't honest with them. I just respected their wish to not attend the wedding. I didn't know it would go down like this because, like I said, I couldn't attend several events before because of my sexuality and my parents never said anything about it. But I have to admit it's kind of sweet that my parents and the rest of my family stood up for me. And they haven't done it before, which was a more than welcome change. While nothing interesting happened in the first 2 days afterward, the terror started as soon as my brother and his wife went on their honeymoon. My parents visited me and told me how the wedding party had escalated. It got so bad that they were close to physical violence. I thought it was funny at first, but this truly bothered me. As I said, the terror started shortly after they went on their honeymoon. And when I say terror, I mean that my sister-in-law's family found both my Facebook and Instagram accounts and started spamming me with hateful messages. I received insults from various different accounts who all had one thing in common. They all had somewhat of a Christian theme and all of them had the same last name. So it wasn't hard to find out whose accounts it was. Mainly because I don't know my sister-in-law's family at all. I only knew her and knew her parents were homophobic Christians. They not only started attacking me, but they also found my boyfriend's account and sent him the same messages. The messages contained on one side are typical bigot stuff like, "You're burning in hell for your sins." One even called my boyfriend and me two devils in disguise. The other side was just blatant insults. You get the idea. I called my parents and told them what they were doing. Then I sent a text message to my brother with screenshots of the messages his wife's family sent me. To which he replied that I shouldn't disturb him with that during his honeymoon as I already destroyed his wedding party. I couldn't believe it. He was just like them. He did send me an apology after my mom told me she'd called him. I got a call this morning from an unknown number. I hesitated because I thought it was one of them. And I was right, but it was none of the people who insulted me. I heard a woman's voice who introduced herself as the half-sister of my brother's wife. She said it didn't go unnoticed what her family was doing and she wanted to apologize for them. I told her I was not going to tell anyone in her family about this and that I didn't blame her for her family's actions. She thanked me and hung up. I don't know why, but I have this feeling she only did this to protect her family from being reported. My mother wrote to me earlier that she wants to report the insults and the harassment of these people and that she demands that my brother divorce his wife or she will disinherit him from her will. Which I believe is a little radical, but I understand where she's coming from. This entire thing escalated so much it's unbelievable. I refuse to go to an anime expo with my disabled girlfriend. I think she hates me now. My girlfriend and I live together. We've gone to conventions in our home state and in nearby states a few times. This one would be the furthest away. She was accepted as a performer at an anime expo in Los Angeles. I would have loved for her to perform, but her assigned spot was for Monday. I work 9 to 5 Monday to Friday and until I hit the 90-day mark I'm classified as temporary. Now I knew what I was getting into when I took the job and I have been looking for alternatives with benefits from day one. I'm assuming I'll have this job at the time of the anime expo, by which point I will be a full employee. When she brought it up today I said I'd love to go to the convention if we could make it work financially, but I can't take Monday off. And I wouldn't want her to stay in another state without me for a day. She brought up that one of her friends lives in Los Angeles and that another friend from Houston did take that day off and would be in Los Angeles for the convention. I said I wouldn't even want her to stay out of state an extra day without me if it was with my best friend I've known since kindergarten. I'm generally somewhat anxious of the world and tend to plan as if the worst case scenario is likely. Just to add, we've discussed other options like if I work 10-hour days the rest of the week to cover the time from Monday, but that would even be rough. It just seems that unless I could take Monday and Tuesday off, it wouldn't really be feasible. I was really planning for us to just not do Anime Expo until I had a better job with time off. We just cannot go. But when I told her the truth she absolutely lost it on me. She berated me with insults and I tried my best to omit the fact that she is disabled. I don't understand why she is able to get so frustrated with me when there's no way around this situation. Not sure if Therese anything I could do to improve my situation, but this is where we're at.
My boyfriend threw me a surprise wedding. I absolutely lost it. Last week, I was invited to a supposedly fancy party by my longtime boyfriend, Mark. We had been dating for 5 years and while we had discussed marriage before, there were no immediate plans for a wedding. Excited about the event, I dressed up in my best attire and arrived at the designated venue. As I entered the grand hall, I was completely taken aback to see all of our family, friends, and acquaintances gathered, eagerly waiting. It turns out, Mark had orchestrated an elaborate surprise wedding for us without my knowledge. Everyone erupted into applause as I stood there, shocked and overwhelmed. I just felt a mix of emotions. While I loved Mark and had dreamed of our future together, the idea of getting married without any prior discussion or consent felt like a breach of trust. So, I pulled Mark aside and tried to express my concerns and reservations about the surprise wedding. I explained that I wanted a say in the planning process, to be part of the decision-making, and to have the chance to prepare mentally and emotionally for such a significant milestone in our lives. However, Mark dismissed my concerns, saying that he thought it would be a romantic gesture and that I would be thrilled. At that moment, I faced a difficult choice: go along with the surprise wedding, putting on a smile despite feeling unsettled, or stand up for my autonomy and voice my true feelings. I ultimately made the decision not to proceed with the surprise wedding, much to the disappointment and confusion of our guests. Now, I find myself at odds with Mark, our families, and even some of our friends who believe I overreacted and spoiled a beautiful moment. However, I firmly believe that a marriage should be a joint decision, with open communication and shared expectations. Everyone's excuse for this is I have always talked about marrying Mark. And again, the problem isn't marrying him, the problem is not having any say in my wedding. Mark thought I'd appreciate it, because I always spoke about how stressful planning a wedding must be. Yes, I think it's stressful, but I'd still like planning one. After this whole ordeal, everyone asked if Mark and I were ending things, in which I replied no. I emphasized towards them and Mark. I still wanted to marry him, and most feel like this is making me more of a jerk since I just wasted a perfectly fine wedding. So am I in the wrong for refusing to attend my own surprise wedding, even though it was intended as a romantic gesture? My boyfriend cheated on me with his terminally ill friend. I can't look at him the same even though she died. I wouldn't have found out if one of our mutual friends didn't slip. My boyfriend and the girl did it when they were on vacation with other friends. She had a terminal illness and is dead now. I'm confident that he was never attracted to her. They never had a relationship beyond that. She did have a secret crush on him though. She was the little sister of their friend group. This incident happened late December 2021. She died in March 2022. He was visiting the hospital when she died. He's never had a death in his life before, so it really shook him. For the past year, his mental health has been very unwell. It's not solely because of her death, but it was the catalyst. He rarely, if ever, talks about his feelings except with me. I hate myself because I get angry inside whenever he mentions her. I can't express my jealousy because she's dead anyway. This jealousy is eating me up. I just know that it wasn't just intimacy. They totally had emotional pounding because of her condition. I don't even know who initiated it. It was probably something like how she didn't want to die a virgin. My boyfriend and I had never even been intimate all the way when he smashed her. To clarify, he didn't lose his virginity to her, but she did lose her virginity to him. We have an otherwise perfect relationship. He's always been a good boyfriend even when he's at his lowest now. I had bad episodes before and the lowest of low points. He was the first who stood by me. My family is strict and didn't approve of us, but he tried hard to win even my extended family over. We've been together for more than 3 years and have known each other since high school. I don't want to push him to the brink. But I'm also afraid that he might be dismissive of my feelings. Fast forward, I couldn't take it anymore, so I talked to him immediately. It was not an angry or accusatory conversation, just very emotionally draining for both parties. I asked him as many questions as I could. He said that he regretted it immediately, but he can't fault his friend much out of compassion for her illness. He didn't tell me because he didn't know how I'd react and was afraid that I'd dump him. He didn't want to hurt me, but he did anyway because he didn't talk about it until now. The guilt is part of why his mental health is awful. He said he keeps feeling more guilty, especially every time we're together, when he talks about his mental health and I support him, and so on. It is true that he is mourning her, but it's more that he is distraught over betraying the one he wants to spend his life with. He didn't know how to talk about the latter, so he covered it up with mourning her when we talked back then. My boyfriend said that if he could, he would have asked me for permission. He would have respected my decision and wouldn't have done it. Though a part of him would also feel guilty about not fulfilling his friend's wish when she died. When I asked him if the intimacy was emotional for him, he admitted that it was because they were close friends and she was dying. He only did it because of their platonic relationship and her impending death. He wouldn't have done it in other circumstances. It wasn't romantic for him. As for who initiated, it was the girl. He was tipsy but not drunk. She kissed him and made the first move. He knew that she had a crush on him. He was never in love with her, never attracted, never saw her as a partner even after what happened. It was spur of the moment because of strong emotions. He didn't get to ask me for permission because it happened exactly at that moment. She didn't directly tell him to screw her, but she confessed her feelings for him after kissing him and touching him. He confessed to me that he felt awkward around her afterwards, but he tried to move past that because they were friends. I think it's so messed up that sleeping with him specifically was one of the dying girl's dreams. Maybe she just didn't care anymore because she was going to leave us anyway. I'm still conflicted. She wasn't even a jerk when she was alive. The girl is dead. I'm alive and with my boyfriend. What more can I do to her? Honestly, I feel like I tainted his memories of her too. They were good friends then, and now she would be remembered as that girl who ruined our relationship. I feel bad about that too. I asked him if he would have told me what happened and he said he didn't know. He might take it to the grave because he wants to forget it even happened. But he also said that he might have told me when he felt confident enough to do so. Either way, he regrets not telling me immediately what happened. I tried to ask him if he thinks she planned the trip or planned to be alone with him to get him to sleep with her, but he didn't let me finish. Unlike with other questions, he got angry. I think he doesn't want to face the fact that he might have been assaulted, especially by a friend who died. His mental health is awful already, and this is a heavy subject, so I didn't ask more about that angle yet. I asked him if he slept with her again after that or with other people. He said no. I asked what if he had another dying friend after this. He said he won't do it again given how much it affected us and our relationship. Especially because he didn't want me to be this hurt again. In our talk, my boyfriend said he'd do anything to gain my trust back again. He kept apologizing and asked me to stay with him. At the same time, he said that he understands my point of view. He wouldn't blame me if I left him and never forgave him because he's aware of his betrayal. He said that it still counted as cheating and it was wrong. When I say in this post that I feel bad about feeling certain things, he didn't gaslight or manipulate me into it. He was reassuring me that what I feel is valid. At least I know my boyfriend's side now. I think that I can move forward with him through this because I understand why it was such a difficult situation for him.
What's the most disturbing secret you've discovered about a family member? My sister's kid has always been strange. It was noticed at a young age and never really seemed to change. Growing up, He never fit in with the other kids in school and always seemed to be slacking with his homework. Anyway, he is now 14 years old, and the only thing that keeps him going is his love for animals. His parents gifted him a golden retriever when he was 5 or 6 years old, and they have been inseparable ever since. So last night, I'm at my sister's place with my wife for dinner. We try to do this once a month. Everything is going smoothly until I notice that my nephew is nowhere to be seen. I asked my sister and her husband where he was while they were both getting ready to set the table to eat. My sister looked like she had forgotten about him and explained that he said he would be coming down a little later because he was finishing some homework. She suggested that I go and get him for dinner since they were both busy, to which I happily agreed. This is where things get weird. I go upstairs to see that his door is closed, which is not unusual for someone trying to get homework done. Without thinking much about it, I walk up to the door and quickly open it without knocking and walk in. I was in the middle of my sentence, which was come on down for dinner, but I was only able to get out the first couple of words before I realized I should have knocked. I wish I could say that I was disturbed after walking in on him doing his private business. There, on the edge of his bed, was my nephew, just blankly staring at me with a jar of peanut butter in his hand. On the floor right in front of him was his beloved golden retriever. To my dismay, the golden retriever was licking his toes, which were covered in peanut butter. I immediately slammed the door shut and made my way back downstairs, not really comprehending what I had seen. My nephew made his way down a couple of minutes later, and we proceeded to have the most awkward meal of our lives. I kept my mouth shut about what I saw and plan on keeping it that way. I'm never going to tell a single soul about this. I hope to God he learned his lesson. Moral of the story, always knock.
Why you should never call your friend daddy. So, about a year ago, my friend started calling me daddy in our group as a joke. It all began when we were hanging out, and I teasingly told a friend to stop being glued to your phone all the time, millennials. We all laughed, and he retorted with sure mom. I then replied, I'm not your mother, but you may call me daddy. This joke stuck, and when we went bowling, someone entered my name as daddy, and it's been that way ever since. Now, here's the issue. A couple of months ago, when we were meeting at a friend's place, everyone greeted me with a loud daddy when I arrived. Apparently, the host's girlfriend found it weird and told me she was freaked out by it. I explained that it was just a joke, but she said she found it somewhat disgusting and instructed her boyfriend not to call me that anymore. We ended the conversation there. That night, when another friend called me daddy, she made gagging noises, but no one else commented on it. Since then, small things have happened. I know she talked behind my back, saying how I sexualize all my friends and have weird kinks and stuff. I'm actually asexual, but she doesn't know that. I got frustrated and asked my friends not to call me daddy when she's around, hoping we could become better friends. Her boyfriend is still a great friend, and I don't want to complicate things over something as silly as a nickname. Not all my friends agreed, but I haven't been called daddy in her presence much since then. The big problem arose yesterday. We were all playing Pictionary online together over Skype, and in the game, you need to enter a name for each player. The host put daddy as my name. We were playing for about 20 minutes when she walked into the webcam's view for the first time, and she had heard daddy a few times by then. She then stated, you know, it's really wrong to be called daddy when you're not a father or being addressed by a young child. I was taken aback by the sudden change of atmosphere, so I retorted, well, is it wrong for your boyfriend to call you sweetheart when you're so salty? After that, his line got disconnected. None of us have been able to reach them since then, and I'm afraid we might have lost a friend because I didn't stop my friends from calling me daddy. Honestly, it didn't even matter that much to me, and I wouldn't have missed it. I plan to apologize for the salty comment because that was out of line anyway. Also, I'm not sure if we missed something. Could someone tell me why daddy is so offensive? Maybe I missed something, and it's possible that it's a very wrong thing to say, and I didn't realize. My little sister called me a parasitic leech. Enjoy the Amish lifestyle. I'm 28 years old and live in a small town where there is a lack of jobs, and a rising cost of living crisis. I moved back in with my parents since we have a good relationship. I buy all the groceries and pay some of the bills. My little sister, 16, however, was not happy. She was saying that I should be a man and move out again. A few weeks ago she started continuously calling me a freeloader and a parasitic leech. My parents are anti-technology, they are not part of a religious cult, they just avoid technology and prefer to live a simplistic life. The only modern technology they use is a laundry machine, a car, a flip phone, and a TV. They don't, however, take away our gadgets if we paid for it ourselves. When I turned 18 and was looking for my first job, I had to handwrite a resume since I didn't have a computer or a printer. It's impossible to get a job while still in HS because of the small job market in our town. Now, my little sister was lucky. I bought her a PC, a smartphone, and a data plan since she was a young child, yet she was continuously calling me all these names. Eventually my little sister's constant name calling got on my nerves and I came up with an idea. I simply repossessed the computer and the smartphone. Now she is having the same childhood I had. Oh, and she stopped with the name calling. Enjoy the Amish lifestyle, little sis. It had been a while since I took back my smartphone, which I had been lending to my little sister, because she kept calling me a parasitic leech for having to move back home due to the rising cost of living. She has had no access to the internet since, as our parents are pretty anti-technology. I believe that justice should be fair, impartial, and reasonable. Reasonable being the key word here. With that said, I decided to give back the smartphone to my little sister, as she stopped with the constant name calling, was being a bit friendly, and because she was sleeping all day ever since I took the phone. I had already sold the computer though. Life is very short and I don't want to hold grudges with anyone, especially my own sister. So I calmly knocked on her door, with a smartphone and a data plan in my hand. "Hi, little sister," I greeted her, through the closed door. "Fuck what, CT?" my sister yelled. I replied, "Well, I was going to give you back the smartphone, but it seems like you want to be left alone, so I'll leave you be. Enjoy the day, little sis." She then came out like a yelping dog, begging for the phone back. I told her that my friend really needed a smartphone, so I was thinking of giving it to him. She then sighed and went back to her room. She's sleeping now. I think I'll let her buy her own phone this time. Hopefully she will mature in the coming years. She was a sweet child a couple of years ago and I hope that she'll be a sweet person in a couple more. My fiancé's parents outed their daughter on Facebook and are making her receive prayer/apologize during church. My fiancé's parents are extremely religious, but they've been worse to his sister, 15, than him. When he was growing up, they didn't force him to attend like her, and he admits that he was a golden child. He would miss church/youth because of sports, and their relationship was fine when he moved out because they weren't as strict on him. He was allowed to work and have secular friends, and they didn't make him do purity like she did. But we were recently made aware of something that will make us rescind their invitation before cutting them out of our lives, but we want to ask for advice before doing that. His dad made a Facebook rant about how he discovered his sister being gay due to parental controls showing search history, and he also ranted about the importance of them as such. He also said he spoke to someone at church and that she probably will too. However, on September 3rd, she's going to be prayed over during service, and we're worried about her/how it seems she's being made to apologize, and we want to ask if there's anything we can do. The church is fairly big with over 1,000. We're going to uninvite anyone who attends that Sunday in agreement with her parents, but the wedding isn't our priority right now. Is there anything we can do to help her out of this situation while we still have a connection with her parents? We'd especially appreciate to hear from anyone who might have been in similar situations with unacceptable parents. My fiancé was able to call his dad shortly after my first post, and he asked if we'd be able to come up and see them this week. He didn't get into a confrontation on the phone because we figured that would hurt our chances of seeing her. He asked if we could come to attend church with them on Sunday in light of the post, and he said we could come on Saturday and spend the night doing something on Saturday afternoon. So as of right now, we plan to drive up on Saturday morning. We live a few hours away, and we talked to one of our friends for advice that we're close with about what to do once we're there, but we're hoping to find some more advice because we're debating some ideas for Saturday, and we're open to any suggestions we get. The reason we asked if we could go to church with them was because of an idea I had, but I want to ask about it here. My fiancé asked if we could take her shopping when we go, and we've taken her shopping in the past without her parents. If she states that she doesn't feel comfortable with what her parents are making her do at church, would that be enough to drive her somewhere else like a hotel or back to our place to avoid it if she wants? Or would that interfere with any chances of being able to legally take her in before she's 18? Some people commented that she should be old enough to not go to church/anywhere if she doesn't want to, but would her parents have grounds to accuse us of kidnapping and take her back? That's where we're at so far, and we're considering a lawyer too and have looked up some this week that we're considering reaching out to. Long story short, her parents told us that they're gonna have her talk to someone, a leader, at church about her being gay, and they said that they received prayer from others who saw the Facebook post along with those they called to vent. The only thing we challenged them on was why they felt the need to out her on Facebook, to which her father said that she needed support from others who would basically talk her out of it/pray on their own. When we suggested trying to be a good example of a straight couple, they liked the idea and said they hoped our wedding would be a good example for her too. They also said that college would be off the table for her unless she showed change, and that's on top of privileges they took away too. We weren't able to talk to her one-on-one on Saturday because she stayed mostly in her room aside from greetings, and she ate dinner in her room as well. And when Sunday came, she rode in her parents' car while we followed them to church. At some point after worship, one of the pastors invited them to come on stage, and they basically prayed for her while laying hands for about 5 minutes. My fiancé said it was short and similar to how they dedicated babies occasionally on Sunday morning and had the newborn be prayed over by a pastor. The only difference was that a pastor told the congregation that she was struggling with her sexuality, and the prayer involved rebuking worldly influences/friends and types of media that they think played a role in it. In regards to his sister, she kept a straight face and wasn't crying or anything, and they didn't ask her to say anything either. Her parents also took us to lunch afterwards, and she was rather quiet/on her phone despite her parents telling her she did great and so forth. We left shortly after lunch because we had work on Monday, but her parents agreed to hang out with us again soon. And when I asked if we could try to talk to her ourselves to try and get through to her, they said we could next time we came over, although things have been difficult with my fiancé since. My fiancé really wanted to go to support his sister, and he made the call to his dad to get permission to stay at their home over the weekend too. However, When some people came up to their family and talked to his sister/her parents after service, some people spoke to my fiancé and asked how he was, and he said it really bothered him a few days after. He grew up in that church, and he said that being there was somewhat traumatic when he didn't expect it to be. Some people asked why he stopped going, among other things, but he's also had second thoughts about keeping in touch with his parents for his sister's sake since. Long story short, he said it was hard to not explode at them and play a face for those 2 days, and he's been hyper-focused on it the past few weeks too. He said it's been eating at him when he's at work, and it's awoken some memories/trauma inside of him that he might have forgotten about since living away from them as an adult. He also wants to uninvite not just his parents, but every Christian relative he's aware of, from our wedding. I have no issue uninviting people from our wedding, and I also wanted to uninvite his parents, although we initially decided against it. He says he wants to talk to a therapist, but not couples therapy because there's some trauma he never told me from his childhood, and I want to respect his space until he's ready to talk about it. He thinks a therapist will tell him to put his upcoming marriage/mental health ahead of his sister, and I could see that honestly too. My commitment is first and foremost to him as it's supposed to be upon marriage. But as for right now, he's looking for a therapist that'll work with his insurance, and I told him to do what's best for him first because it's hard to help others if he's hurting. The thing about put your gas mask on first, so we're just waiting to see what comes from therapy. My boyfriend's professor invited herself to his Airbnb and asked him to stay up with her. Should I be worried? My BF became friends with his former professor sometime last year. I don't know what to make of it. They seem to be friendly and talk consistently every week, and from what he tells me, it's usually very surface level. Sometime last year, after the course ended, my BF, his professor, and some of his male classmates went somewhere to eat together. My BF brought up that he was going to be attending an event, plastic modeling show, and his professor showed interest and invited herself to the event and asked if she could stay at his Airbnb with his friends. My BF and his friends were all okay with it. I unfortunately couldn't attend the event, but from what my BF told me, he and a few of his friends met up at their Airbnb. That same day, his professor came to my BF's Airbnb and tagged a few of her girlfriends along. The next day, they went to the event, went to a bar afterwards and got drinks. A lot of them got pretty drunk and my BF took the liberty of being the designated driver for his professor and her friends. His professor won some model kit from the event, and even in her drunken state, asked my BF if he could stay up with her to work on the kit together. From what my BF tells me, nothing else happened that night. After the event, everyone from that group created a group chat and they continued to plan and talk about future events together. Since then, my BF and his friends had met up with his professor and got to meet his professor's fiancée at an anime convention and it sounded like they all got along well. His professor continues to express interest in other events and it sounds like she may be attending another event with my BF and his friends in the near future. I trust my boyfriend and don't think he is hiding anything from me. Honestly speaking, I think it's hard for me to understand their friendship as it is his professor. I've had a conversation with him on this, and he's let me know that I have nothing to worry about. I would like to hear others' opinions and see what y'all think of this friendship. Is this something I need to be concerned about or is it really nothing? The worst thing my father ever said to me. To start things off with a few side notes, I am very insecure about my body and have been since a child. I am especially insecure about my stomach and thighs. I do train. I do eat right, but it's just an issue that will forever haunt me. I have come to terms with it over the years, but at the moment, I'm not sure what to think. I am 5'3" and weigh about 50 to 55 kilograms. My stomach is a bit plump and my thighs are pretty large. My body is covered in stretch marks from God knows where. I have been teased about this in school to the point of dropping out due to mental health and trauma. The rumors got out of hand. It started with my body, then it went to me apparently sleeping with everyone in school. They bragged about the thickness of my thighs, how fun it apparently was to grab the skin on my hips. How the marks made them feel superior because they looked like scars. Keep in mind I have never shown my body during my time in school. I have never slept or merely engaged in conversations with anyone unless I was forced to. I never mentioned it. Never did sports. The only person who knew was a so-called best friend who ended up getting jealous that I managed to pull a date. That was the only reason. It hurt a lot, but by the time she confessed I was already down low. To the point of nearly ending it all. My teachers even laughed in my face when I went to them for help because my parents brushed me off. The only thing that was holding me together with sparkly glitter glue was that godsend of a date who I am still with today. He always assures me that my body is perfect to him, but I could never truly believe it. I could never shake away those memories, and I can't shake away the comments from my own father. The person who I looked up to and respected. My father has always been a joking person. Always finds a way to lighten up a room, but now, I don't think I can ever see him the same again. He knows how I feel about my body. He has always supported me and encouraged me to train if I really wanted to, but now I feel like it was just an act. I don't know what to think or feel. I don't know if I'm overreacting or not. About a year ago the comments started. They were innocent at first, so I brushed it off as his jokes. Then came the hip pinching. The stretch mark dad jokes. The remarks about wearing tight pants to hide my oversized legs. It really hurt. I couldn't deal with it at the time, so my aunt, who I consider as a mother, took matters into her own hands. It stopped for a while. Until a few months ago. I was slowly getting comfortable with my body again and decided to wear shorts for the first time in a long time when we went to visit my parents. I had my back turned while talking to my mother. My stomach dropped when I felt the pinch on my thighs. I knew what was coming. He said, "What's with this? I thought you diet." And he jiggled the skin of my thigh, emphasizing what he was referring to. I couldn't stop the sob and I just left. My partner didn't know what was happening when I pulled him to the car and asked him to drive home. I was a mess. That night he just held me and I was grateful for his presence. All the memories started coming back by that single joke. He still found ways to comment on my body, but I forced myself to ignore it and act unbothered. That brings us to 3 days ago. It's nearing my birthday, so my mother and I were discussing an outfit to get me. She wanted to personally look for something, so she needed my measurements, which I gave her. She was using my dad's phone as she has a bad streak of luck with breaking hers. My dad then started. He asked me why my waist was so wide. Why were my hips so high? Why wasn't it proportioned right? If I was sure I would measure in cm instead of I went along with it because I wanted to at least try to be the better person, but I failed. I broke when he told me that I will never be able to fit into any of the outfits my mother showed me. It's pointless and I should just cut holes into a bag and wear that to my birthday party instead because it's the only thing that I will fit in. He didn't stop there. He said it needed to be long enough to make me look at least normal. I dropped my phone at that point, sobbing. I couldn't stop, and again my partner just held me, whispering reassuring words throughout my breakdown. I ended up trying to talk to him. Trying to get him to stop, but he just brushed me off like my school days. He told me he was only joking and I need to stop being so serious. That I can't help my body turn out the way it did. The worst part about it was they visited me today and I had to act fine because we had other guests over. It didn't take long for the jokes and pinching to start. In front of everyone. He pinched my thigh when I walked past. He pinched my stomach, my hips. He said that I'm getting bigger because of my stretch marks that he apparently never knew were there. He asked if I was mad at him, but all I could do was plaster on a smile because I couldn't say anything. I was on the brink of bursting into tears. When they were leaving, he tried to joke around and pinch me again. I managed to choke out, "Please stop," and he told me to stop being dramatic and accept that it's a joke. My partner is not happy about it, but I asked him not to intervene. I am appreciative that he is here for me, but I cannot handle a fight right now. He's been trying to cheer me up, showing me cute outfits, saying how nice I will look in them and all other stuff, but I can't bring myself to let it go. I know it's not his fault and am wrong for not wanting him to step in, but right now I just need a hug. Am I overreacting?
What's the most insane revenge you got on a terrible roommate? I was a senior in college. My roommate was a sophomore, but it was his first time living in a dorm. He'd been a pretty lousy roommate, constantly left the room a mess, left his stuff on my side of the room and on my bed, stole my alcohol, used my shit without permission, never cleaned up my dishes after he used them, and a bunch of other stuff. I confronted him about all these issues on several occasions and got the resident advisor involved with the alcohol stealing issue because at the time, he was under 21. Things still continued anyway. He asked me once if it was okay if his girl spent the night, which I said no. We were in the middle of a pandemic, plus that's especially weird if I was there. I also had to wake up every day at 8 o'clock for work, which he knew would stay up until 2 a.m. playing video games. Not to mention, he would set like 10 alarms in the morning with a bunch of different alarm tones. I hit a breaking point and decided to do something cruel. Every morning when I woke up, I'd observe his alarm pattern and how he'd respond. He had several alarms that he'd ignore, all with the same sound. He had a couple half-hour alarms that had a unique sound, and then the final alarm had its own sound too. All of them were default iPhone sounds. So his brain had been trained to this alarm pattern for a while, I'd assumed. So I started step 1 of the punishment. I set up a sequence of alarms on my phone, identical to his sequence, but an hour early. He responded to my alarms the exact same way he'd respond to his own. I kept this up for a week and his brain was eventually retrained to sleep through double the amount of alarms as before. Then, phase 2 kicked in. Random inconsistencies in my alarm pattern. Some days I'd play all the alarms, while other days I'd only play one that his brain was trained to ignore. That way, his brain expects to sleep through like 20 alarms and only ever hears 11. He slept through his alarm at least 4 times in 2 weeks. Eventually, he finally changed his alarm pattern so he'd only have one alarm and he no longer had the energy to stay up until 2 a.m.
Make my disabled cousin cry? Say goodbye to your wife. My former boss was the worst human being I've ever met. He did all sorts of things to mess with anyone he didn't like. A while ago, I was at a family event in a local park, walking with a young boy from our family who is developmentally disabled with Down syndrome, Ben. Ben does fairly well all things considered, but he's always been sensitive to anyone making fun of the way he looks or his condition. We are just having a good time on our little stroll, Ben and I both enjoying the day. Along comes my boss, Rob, walking toward us. I cringe at seeing him but smile and say hello to play nice. Rob replies, "There's something you don't see every day. A pair of ugly retards walking together." Ben bursts into tears as Rob laughs and walks off. I deal with Ben and ignore Rob. I'm super pissed and trying to calm Ben down. Finally, I get Ben to focus on how he has me and a lot of other awesome friends and family and that Rob is a stranger and what he thinks doesn't matter. We walked some more and I saw that Rob was at the park with his wife and teen daughter having a cookout. He had apparently been on his way back to his family from a trip to the toilet when he saw us. Back to being super pissed. I went back to our gathering and talked to an adult cousin of mine, Jake, telling him what happened. Jake wanted to get revenge on Rob, but I reminded him that this was my boss. I didn't want Rob to know the revenge had anything to do with me because then he'd make my work life even worse than he already had. So Jake asked me for anything I knew about Rob that might help. I told Jake a bunch of things about Rob, but the relevant info here is that Rob liked to drink a particular kind of locally made beer at a certain bar. Rob had talked of having drank there on the previous Friday night while his wife and daughter were away visiting her family. Also, Rob had recently told a story at work about his wife's obsession with a particular little green fictional character, Baby Yoda. Turns out his wife kept a stuffed Yabby Yoda, said Rob. Rob's family is now paying attention. Jake replied, I am just so excited to see you, sweetie. Friday night was so amazing. What are you talking about? Said Rob. Seriously, you're going to act like you don't remember now? I know you were a bit tipsy after all of those beers, but certainly you remember what happened later, said Jake. Nothing happened later. Or ever. I don't even know your name. Rob responded angrily. Jake had him right where he wanted him. Really? You were screaming it on Friday. Rob, with his face now turning red, you lying son of a. At this point Rob's wife interrupted. Listen, I don't know who you are, but this is my husband. I'm sure you have him mistaken for someone else. Please just leave us alone. Jake replied, oh, I'm not mistaken. We had the best sex ever on Friday night and now he's acting like he doesn't even know me. I told you, this is my husband. You're mistaken. Jake was now on demon timing. Oh, maybe I am. I guess it was someone else who took me back to his place on Cherry Street and had great intimacy with me on the bed right next to Baby Yoda. Sorry. Jake turns and walks away. Rob's wife was horrified. Oh my god, Rob, what the hell is wrong with you? You're gay now? Long story short, Rob's wife wasn't happy with him. This was apparently the tipping point that made her file for divorce soon thereafter. Rob frequently complained at work in the following months about how he didn't care about his wife but really missed his daughter. And how much it sucked to live in his new place compared to his old home. Every time he complained about his lack of a home life at work, I knew he did it to himself when he was mean to a developmentally disabled kid. The best part is he never figured out I was involved at all. What's the most gut-wrenching secret your partner revealed to you? We've lived together for the entirety of our relationship and had a pretty active and open intimate life. We experimented and tried new things every now and then, and I believe that we've always been open and honest with communication in bed. She would always mention that she's close to bursting during intimacy and finish with an appearance of satisfaction. I think it hurt quite a bit when I found out that she had been lying about it and never quite felt comfortable sharing this with me. Frankly, the fact that she can't bust during penetration is not even close to a deal breaker for me. I know that a lot of women experience a rough history with abusive relationships in the past and probably felt a lot of shame that prevented her from talking about it. But I feel like my trust in her has been affected quite a bit. We've also spoken about both of us getting individual therapy to work through some of our respective past experiences, but neither of us has ever taken the first step to actually getting help. My partner and I had a long chat. I tried my best to reassure her that she's an absolute soldier for getting through the guilt and opening up. I tried my best to make sure she felt safe and understood. She spoke to me about how she enjoys intercourse and gets clitoral orgasms. But a lot of her attention was on making sure she was following templates that she thought were the best for me. Just because she felt like it was the best way to keep things working and happy. I clarified why I was hurt and let her know that my intention was always to be more involved, collaborate, and have the most fun we possibly could together. I reassured her that I've always been down for experimenting with toys and sensate foreplay. We were both quite emotional and teary-eyed throughout the entire chat. I could tell that this lie weighed pretty heavily on her, and I saw a sense of relief in my gal that I haven't for a while.
Force yourself on a coworker and face no punishment? Not on my watch. I was lounging on my couch enjoying the last of my weekend one day when I got a call telling me that one of our sponsored employees, Janice, was picked up for indecent exposure. Long story short, she was caught hooking up with a guy in a private booth at a local restaurant. The police walked in on them whilst engaged in some seriously heavy petting. They were fully clothed, but the guy she was with, or practically on top of I should say, had his junk out. Turns out he works at the restaurant 2 doors down from where she worked. After a bit of chastising and threatening to escalate the situation and have them deported to sufficiently scare their senses back into them, they let them go. But not before signing a pledge-type document promising to never repeat the offense, or else. Basically, a slap on the wrist and everyone got to go home. But it doesn't end there. That night, something clicked in my brain and I had the thought, how and why did the police find them in a private booth in the back of a restaurant before the restaurant's own staff did? So I called the restaurant the next day. I thought maybe they called the police on them immediately for some reason. Or maybe the couple got belligerent when staff asked him to stop. Turns out the staff didn't notice a thing. In fact, up until that day the police have never been to that restaurant before. And when they did, they simply walked in, went straight to the back booths where the two were sat and busted right in. I realized this meant that someone must have seen them and called the cops on them point blank. The question was who? I decided to speak to Janice. I wanted to speak to her anyway that day, both to check in and get her version of the situation. I also gave her the you did something stupid chat and reassured her that she's keeping her job. I also wanted to ask her who she thought called her in. Without hesitation she said it had to be Sami, who was one of our drivers. Why do you think it was Sami? I asked. He's the one that dropped me off at the restaurant that day. He might have seen my friend walk in right after me and called the police on us, she said. I knew the part of him dropping her off was true, that literally his job and her only free motive, but sadly barren, which is apparently why she settled with an older fart like him. He was so proud of how pretty she was. He was also a devout religious man, or so he claimed. So I asked him why call the police? He came back with after I dropped her off I waited to see who she was meeting because she's a troublemaker woman. When I saw the man walk in after her I called police because I know him and he is married and this is against the laws of God and man. I'm smiling now, I knew I got him. Why do that instead of calling your direct manager, or even me, and before even seeing for yourself what they were doing exactly at that? Why make it my problem and the company's problem what she does in her own time? Silence. His head was down counting his shoes. Sami, I know why. I know what you did. Janice just told me. I'm disgusted by you and sorry that we hired you. He had the audacity to mumble, I only tried once, sir. I almost slapped him. Anyway, I fired him. I handed him a one-way ticket home, which was in 4 hours, and told him to get the hell out. This is where I get my not-so-petty revenge. I had his house phone number saved somewhere from we hired him. It was on his CV. I knew that because I called him there to interview him before we first hired him. I waited until his flight took off and dialed the number. I assumed either his mother or wife would answer the call, but I was wishing for the latter. I got my wish. Hello, Mrs. Sami. I'm your husband's employer. Well, his former employer anyway. Just so you know, I fired him a few hours ago and he's on a flight home as we speak. His flight number is 9847. He will be arriving at 10:30. Just so you are aware, I was forced to fire him because he attempted to assault a fellow employee half his age. I'm sorry, I said and promptly hung up, but not before hearing her gasping in shock. What's the craziest way you've heard of someone catching their spouse cheating? I had a friend, Bob, who was suspicious of his wife's social circle. One of her closest friends had been caught cheating and tried to throw her under the bus as well. Bob had no proof and things settled down for a while. Bob was an IT professional and was very good with PCs and networks. Nearly a year later, Bob's wife was acting shady again after her high school reunion. He confided in me and we talked through some scenarios. Then he jokingly mentioned a keylogger. He finally asked me to just drop it and most of all, don't tell anyone, not even your wife. A couple months pass and I'm up early getting ready for work. I get a Facebook Messenger notification and see that I've been sent a link from Bob, but it's a group chat. It's literally everyone we know, her family, his family, our friends. I didn't open it. It looked like a phishing link even though it came from him who's extremely cautious. A short while later, I get an email from Bob with some ominous comments and the same link. It's a group email with the recipients openly copied, his wife's work, her family, her friends, his family and other people I didn't know. I knew it was legitimate now, so I opened it. The link was to a hastily made website containing pictures and videos of his wife and another man. This wasn't hidden camera footage, it was screenshots including video screen captures. Weeks worth of screenshots. He had captioned each item with snarky comments and colorful names for his wife and her lover. It was an embarrassing amount of evidence. Videos of her beating with her lover. Chat logs about how they can't wait to smash again. Solo beating videos of her and him. Tons of pictures. And the straw that broke the camel's back. Trash talking her husband to her lover. Comments about how much bigger and better he was. Her efforts to stroke her lover's ego were especially hurtful. I dropped what I was doing and called him. He was drunk and combative, he had been up all night making the website and drowning in liquor. Not one good word to say about women in general. He was extremely emotional, but after some work I had convinced him to take the website down before it does irreparable damage to his marriage, their careers and his children. As he's sobbing and logging in to remove the website I hear loud yelling as she bursts into the room. A screaming match ensues and there's nothing I can do to pull him back. Apparently her mother or sister saw the page, blew up her phone until she woke up and answered. She saw the website and went on the offensive. The phone call drops after 30 seconds of her screaming while Bob is calling her a whore and I can't contact him again. The website was still up for the rest of the day and he was kind enough to put a view counter on it. Hundreds of people watched her smashing with a married former classmate. Bob had done his homework. He installed a keylogger that records the whole screen. When he was out she would log into the PC and Facebook and play with her boyfriend. Bob had found her lover, his family, his wife's family, his job, and so on. All these people were included in the Facebook and email groups. I do not know what became of her lover and his marriage, but I do know what happened to Bob's life. His wife was desperate to make amends, she tried and offered everything. In the end it was her comments about her lover and his prowess that were her undoing. Bob tried to take her back, even after all his friends and family had seen her naked and cheating. But he couldn't get over the comments about his manhood. Bob eventually left her, gained about 100 pounds and then finally moved as far away as possible and became a horrible human being. I have no idea what he's doing now as he went scorched earth with most friendships and his family. She's gross and has a face shaped like a bowling ball now. Line forms at the rear. I served in the military for 1 month. I came back to find my girlfriend had completely changed. Me and my girlfriend have been dating for 2 years. I was planning to propose in the next 3 months and I was extremely sure that she was going to say yes, as we have been planning our lives together. She was hinting that I should propose by sending me cheeky proposal posts, signaling that she wants an engagement ring on her finger, and she sometimes would say when we get married. We live together. Admittedly, we started fast and we rushed into things. We started living together a month into our relationship. We have been living together ever since. She was always so loving with me. This is the best relationship I've ever had. She always made me feel loved and cared for, and even if she is somewhat selfish by nature, she always put me first. And she loves me very much. And I love her very much. I have been the perfect boyfriend. I kept on taking her on dates, giving her gifts, helping her around the house, solving her problems, and giving her affection and care. We never fought, not even once. But then, things changed. I had to go and serve in the military for a month. She dropped me off at the bus station, kissed me, hugged me, cried, said that she loved me and would miss me. While I was in the military, she sent me texts saying how much she missed me and she called me frequently, speaking in a loving manner. After about 4 days though, this stopped. During the month we barely spoke, and only when I called. She sent me at least 20 texts. When I came back, she came to welcome me. She was very distant. She didn't even seem happy that I was back. Everything felt off about her. We went back to our home and I asked what was wrong and why she was acting this way. We spoke about it for hours and she said that during my absence she realized that she had too much love and wanted to cool off a bit. She said we rushed into things and she wanted me to move out, as she was not ready for this kind of life where we live together. She said that she wanted to live a little and not do everything together. She wanted to go on dates with me and experience the things we hadn't experienced because we immediately moved in together. She wants to go out and have fun on her own too, and she wants the space for herself, her own order of things. She is studying medicine and she's in her last year, and she wants to focus more on that too. I said okay, I will move out. But I don't feel like this explains her being so distant. I asked if there was somebody else and she said no. She said that she only wants to live her life like a 24-year-old and not a 30-year-old. I don't keep her from dressing the way she wants or I don't get jealous when she goes out with friends. But I understand that being there 24/7 can make her feel burnt out. She said she loved me and wanted to keep working on the relationship and that everything would be better for us this way. But I feel kind of icky about this. I feel like our relationship is dying. Everything changed so fast and she doesn't even say I love you back when I say it. I feel like there's a distance between us all the time. I got a house and I'm moving out tomorrow. I canceled my plans to propose and I'm ready to take it slow like she wants to. I feel like this can break us though. Can our relationship survive this? Why can this happen? What's the outlook? Day after day, she eventually said I love you. I thought this was my go sign and started up a conversation about our relationship. It was a really good talk. She was honest and I could feel it. I will be honest with you too. To address the obvious, I thought she could have cheated as well, but nothing like that happened. She has made it clear that she didn't cheat in a respectable, clear way and tone. And I am convinced she didn't. I trust this without any doubts now. This being a soft breakup was my other concern. I asked her if she considered breaking up with me and she said the thought came into her mind, but she didn't want to as she loves me and was sure that she would love the future we will have. She didn't want a life without me. I asked if moving out would eventually lead to a breakup and she said she didn't think it would, that she thought it would only make us stronger. The problem was, as it turns out, that I went from being a happy person to someone who was worrying and depressed. She only realized this was the case when I was gone and I wasn't around to spread negativity anymore. She said that she fell in love with me because I was happy and eccentric. She mentioned that while I was doing things that a good boyfriend would do, she felt I was doing them out of duty and that I used to be very excited about buying her flowers. But lately, when I came home with flowers, I didn't celebrate this small occasion with her. I just gave them to her and went to bed. I admit, I've been very sulky the past few months. I was always worrying about my career and finances and not being able to accomplish my future goals. I had already realized this while I was serving and worked through it myself. I think I am in a better place now and she says she saw that I am. Her solution to this was for me to move out. My negative energy wouldn't affect her anymore. Because it did, and she already has a lot to worry about. She needs a positive attitude to stay strong and I was making that harder. She also realized that we were too codependent and too much in a routine. She thought moving out would solve this also. I agree. We both were very independent people at the start, but then we got lost in love. I was always waiting for her to come home and she was always waiting for me to do anything. This ordeal made life somehow stale. She realized that because I did so much for her, she became heavily dependent on me to solve her problems, making her feel weak and incapable. Because of this reliance, she even had a hard time paying the bill and this got to her. She missed her old self, the one with confidence and power. I realized that I lost myself too. I was a social person who commonly took the initiative to do something, with a lot of flashes and crashes in my life. I lost that, I lost friends and I lost my active lifestyle. She wants to go out with friends and not include me in everything. She wants to not worry about the things she says while with friends because I might be uncomfortable with it. She wants to sometimes take long walks alone. She doesn't want to ask me every time she wants to buy something. She doesn't want to feel guilty when her day-to-day plans don't include me. She admitted that she received flirtatious male attention when doing her internship at school. I wasn't surprised as she is very good looking and with a very feminine personality to boot. She says she would never cheat on me and didn't want to respond to anything, never considered anyone else but me in her life, but she liked it. She enjoyed the ego boost and that made her feel guilty. Guilty that she could like such a thing while I was away facing hardship. I said it was normal to like attention from the opposite gender, especially when you're lonely. I appreciated that she immediately tried to shut down advances and stayed committed and loyal to me. I don't think this will be a problem, and she looked very relieved when I thought it wasn't a big deal. In the end, she said that she missed the old me, the one who was happy and excited about the little things. She said she loved me very much and she was ready to continue the relationship we had before if I could get away from my sulky self finally. She tried to make me happy, but I was feeling bad for too long. Me regaining myself meant us regaining the amazing relationship we had. Us shedding away our codependence meant us having a stronger, more stable future where nothing like this happens again. After the talk, everything changed for the better. She looked so relieved and I gave her my word that I would try to not fall into this situation again. She hugged and kissed me, and gave me a gift she bought for me while I was away. I took her out to a nice place to drink and celebrate afterward. I felt happy for the first time in a long time. We had an amazing time and discussed many things. We came back home to have the most intimate and amazing intercourse we had since the beginning of our relationship and stayed up all night cuddling and listening to music. So, things are looking good for us right now. I am very happy we got over this and I'm very excited about the future. An autistic girl is inappropriately touching me. I feel like I can't do anything about it. I have been going to a program which is basically a program to do things that interest you and you get a grade for it. I've been in said program since September 7th and since then I've been inappropriately catcalled, touched, had my personal space invaded, and a destroyed reputation by an autistic girl, Ava. I first met Ava on the first day of the program. We were doing a sketching clothes task for the first day so the teacher could find out about our fashion type or something along those lines. While I was drawing my clothes, I heard Ava mention me to her aide. I thought at first she was talking about someone else in the program because there were 10 students including her and me. After a few minutes she finally came up to me and began talking to me about my drawing. I tried to be simple and bland towards her as I was too focused on designing my clothes, but the more I respond to her, the more she got closer and closer towards me. It got to the point where me and her were touching shoulders. After what seemed like hours, we had to go to the computer room to do a Google Slides presentation assignment. Me being the introverted kid I am, I decided to sit all the way in the back, and who decides to sit next to me? Ava, of course. It didn't help that she was asking me questions on the most basic stuff ever, like how to move images, how to change the font, how to add a photo. Like, ma'am, you have an aide, ask her. But finally, after 30 minutes of her asking me questions, it was her time to board her small yellow bus back to her school. I thought to myself, man, this day was not good, it gonna get better. But was I wrong? The next day we went back to the computers. I was doing the finishing touches on my project, when out of nowhere, Ava came up from behind me, covered my eyes with her cold hands, and goes guess who? Mind you, her aide and another student saw her do this and didn't do a single thing about it, and for the next 3 hours, she grabbed and rubbed my arms, legs, thigh, neck, back, and my ears, and copied my entire Google Slide presentation image by image, color by color. Then we had to go present our projects, and our teacher, Ms. G, saw that our projects looked alike. She made a comment about how we could be related based on our projects. Ava started laughing and rubbing my back while staring at me. Mind you that everyone was staring at me, none of them did or say anything. Later into the class she found she was being transferred into a different class, which I thought it was the end of it. After school I told my dad and mom what's been going on so far. My dad just told me to let the aide or the teacher take care of it and that I'm doing a good thing. My mom, however, went ballistic. She wasn't yelling or anything. In the end, she told me to tell the teacher and the aide, but I, unlike my mom, didn't want to cause problems, so I didn't do anything for 7 days. Those 7 days became the worst, humiliating, and depressing time of my life. Every day before class ended, she would come, grab and rub me into places I didn't want to be rubbed or grabbed in, and make flirtatious statements at me. Which again, 9 other people saw this and decided to do nothing. I even tried to do a help signal, either no one understood it or they just didn't care. After the 7th day I had enough and grabbed her arm, placed it on the table. I then looked around and saw a dude and a girl giving me a dirty look like I was doing something wrong. I let go of her hand and she still continued to touch me. On the bus ride home, I decided enough is enough and emailed Ms. G, the counselor for the program, her aide, my school counselor, my mom, and anyone else who could possibly do something about it. What resulted is a 2 to 3 all. They tried to put the blame on me by telling my mom that I was probably doing something to indulge it and I put my hands on her in a violent way. However, thanks to my counselor, they made a deal for Ava to never enter my class or wait for me in the hall. Usually this is where the story ends. I live happy ever after living the rest of my 17-year-old life, but no, it gets worse. 2 weeks after I was walking out of the class when I saw Ava and her aide waiting for me, Ava tried to indulge in conversation with me, which I ignored to the best of my ability, and I guess she didn't like it very much, which then she grabbed the hood of my hoodie and yanked it towards her, in which I grabbed her hands and put it towards her waist and gave her aide a dirty look that reads, "Do your job." I wasn't mad at it though, I got mad over some other things earlier that day. I never saw her again until the last 2 days. Out of nowhere she came into my room, and instead of kicking her out, Ms. G welcomed her in which of course she was sitting next to me. But no touch however, so thought she must have improved. But boy oh boy was I wrong. In the first 15 minutes of class, we draw poses for our models. Yesterday, Ava came in with a box of stuff and asked Ms. G where should she put it. Out of all the places she could have, she said to put it right next to me. She came up to me and goes, "What's up honey baby pie?" Out loud for the whole class to hear. Not even 5 seconds later, she put her neck on my shoulder and started to hug me while she grabbed one of my thighs, which the teacher saw and did nothing about it. It's not until I stared at her aide when she decided to stop hugging me, and now here we are. Stuck in a situation where I can't talk to my counselors cause they'll try to blame it on me, I can't tell my parents cause I don't want them to freak out, and I most certainly can't tell my teacher, or classmates to help. They're just going to ignore me and continue to pretend like nothing is going on. What is the worst? A simple joke has backfired. This has been the 2 most miserable weeks of my life and is the first time I've been able to laugh at the situation that is now my life. 2 weeks ago, my girlfriend of 8 years and I were enjoying a relaxed lazy Saturday morning, drinking coffee and joking around. For the past several months, both of us had been so busy and hadn't really gotten a break or had a weekend, let alone a single day where there were no plans. But lo and behold, there were no plans on this Saturday and we were just basking in each other's company. To first put things into context. Probably over the last year or so, I'd been noticing a steep decline in her intercourse drive and truly was feeling the imbalance between us. All the insecurities I grew up with have been resurfacing and felt myself desperately seeking validation in my appeal to her. She is drop dead gorgeous. Just absolutely so stinking gorgeous, and I've always felt so incredibly lucky to have her. But it was almost a curse to be so drawn to somebody that was decreasingly interested in intercourse. You probably did the math and noticed that we were both 16 years old when we started dating. We were high school sweethearts, and believe it or not, we were each other's first and only partners. We were each other's first and last everything. Or so I thought. Anyways, back to 2 weeks ago, trying to draw attention to myself being draped by nothing but a towel and doing my hardest to set up a scenario where she might initiate something with me. I found a way to brag about me having an 8-meat stick. It was so desperate and so forced, trying to play it off as a playful comment I can't help but cringe thinking about how I said it. She was quick to say something like, "Your meat stick is great, but there's no way it's 8 inches. Of course, I leaned into that to defend myself, and after she continued to argue with me, she said that she'd be happy to help me prove it. To me, it was shaping up to be a win-win. I get to prove her wrong and one thing will lead to another. I can remember how uniquely erotic it felt to be held by her in an almost completely different way. Anyways, she was right. The ruler was putting me at 7.75. I still saw it as a win, but she teased me hard over it. And this is where everything took a turn for the worse. I said something like, "What kind of meat stick expert are you if you can tell the difference between a 7.75 and an 8 meat?" Of course, it was a playful and meaningless rhetorical question. Maybe in my subconscious, I was hoping I was about to learn about her having undisclosed hub habits. Which to me would have been incredibly hot. Basically, imaging her with any kind of a drive was the best thought ever. It never crossed my mind that the question would catch her off guard and cause her to look for some kind of real answer. She tried to say something but was tripping over her words and started getting super nervous. It was so out of the blue and awkward, and she must have seen how suspicious or uncomfortable I was starting to look because she started crying. My heart was pounding and I could feel the blood rushing through my ears. Looking back on it, it's funny how quickly it went from 0 to 100 on the panic level, but there I was. My meat immediately soft. Anyways, you guessed it. She finally got it out and said that she couldn't hide it anymore and admitted that she was cheating on me with a guy from her gym. That alone felt like a bullet through my heart. But then I came to learn that that guy was the dad of a close friend of mine growing up. The guy that scarred me as a child by yelling at me when I spilled orange juice on his carpet. And now he was doing the love of my life. The girl who I had bought an engagement ring for 2 months ago. I know how funny of a situation it is to hear it, but I can't see it as anything other than the most nauseating mental image. So here I am today scrolling through pictures of me and my now first ex crying and experiencing heartbreak on a whole new level. The lump in my throat won't go away and my heart feels like a brick. All because I joked about my meat. I do realize that most of the fault and the blame is on her and that the situation at large is not my fault. But I really wish I hadn't made the comment I made. I think she had been planning to tell me the truth. I think that because that's what she told me. The question is if that was truthful or not. Second to wishing none of this cheating had happened, I wish that I didn't put her in the middle of an immature playful argument. Everything about that argument was painful and sour and so not like either of us. And it could have been handled so much better if we were in a better frame of mind and she had the chance to approach me instead of feeling outed or caught. God, how I wish I can turn back time. Lawyers, who's the most idiotic client you ever had to work with? I was pushing 40, and I'd learned a lot of lessons in more than 10 years of legal practice. But one of the most important lessons I learned was from an older lawyer that I worked for as a summer student, after the second year of law school. A lawyer has 3 duties, he told me: first to himself, second to the court, and last, the client. Always make sure you come first, and the client comes last. The reason? Because clients will screw you over, he said. They'll throw you under the bus without thinking twice. I should have stayed with this lawyer, but being young and an idiot, I had to go work downtown. I'm still downtown now. Fortunately for me, I remember this lesson, and it came in handy many years later when a client really did try to throw me under the bus. My client was this mid-sized company that did this and that and owned things here and there, not big enough to be listed, but it did have a pretty sizable real estate portfolio, and one day a building they owned burned to the ground. The company wanted to collect on the insurance, so they told Frank, a veteran salaryman, to deal with it. Frank was close to 60 years old and thought he knew what he was doing. He didn't need me to help him with the insurance claim, he told me. He had everything under control. Besides, lawyers are expensive. Some guys really get off on not paying legal fees, and Frank was one of those guys who gloated over every penny that he managed not to pay to the lawyers. I dealt with Frank a lot, and he was always nickel and diming me. The insurer is going to screw you, I told Frank. It was only by luck that I even knew about the fire and the loss because Frank had not asked for my help. He'd just let it slip one day, and since then, I'd kept on top of him, trying to get him to smarten up. I'd had to fight to get him to send me the proof of loss form to make sure he hadn't messed that up. Frank messed up a lot, and I wondered sometimes how he had a job. But the proof of loss was okay, at least, so that was one less thing to worry about. You don't know that, he said. I could tell he just wanted to get me off the phone. I'm paid to know when insurers are trying to screw my clients, I said, and the insurer is going to screw you. They've been stringing you along for ages with requests, questions and paperwork, but they aren't going to pay you. Not unless you sue them. But Frank said he knew what he was doing, that it was all under control, and besides, he got along with the adjuster so great. The limitation period expires in 2 weeks, I said, and once those 2 weeks pass, it will be too late to sue. The moment that limitation period expires, they will stop taking your calls. You'll get a final email saying sorry, you're out of time, and that will be that. Don't leave this till the last minute. Let me sue right now, and you'll have the money in no time. Frank was like, sure, fine, whatever, don't bother me, I got this, blah blah blah, and he got off the phone as soon as he could. I sent him the usual email with clear warnings and recommendations, which he ignored. I sent the email again, and then again as the limitation period approached, and again a couple of days before the deadline. I'm going to be at trial, and you won't be able to reach me, my final email said, but you have to sue. You have other firms on your list, so pick one and sue. He didn't bother to reply, and I went off to do my trial. The trial lasted a couple of weeks, and no email from Frank. Then a month passed, and another month, and still no email. I figured he must have sorted things out. Maybe Frank was right after all, I said to myself, and then my phone rang. It was Frank. Remember that fire insurance thing we spoke about? We'd only spoken about it like a dozen times. I figured he was calling up to gloat, so I cut to the chase. So they paid out. That's great, Frank. You were right. He asked me what I was talking about, and he could see a copy of the claim. What claim? I said. The claim against the insurer. You know, that claim. Does that mean the insurer didn't pay? I said. He hung up on me, and then, just like I told you they wouldn't, and now that the limitation period has expired, they told you to jump in the lake, leaving you with a loss in the millions. Is that it? I'd made a mistake by not going over Frank's head when he wouldn't listen to me, but if I'd gone over Frank's head, I never would have received another file from him, so I didn't. But that was then, and this was now, so I CC'd Frank's boss and his boss's boss, plus I CC'd Bill, the client's in-house counsel. Bill acknowledged my email right away and called me later that day. Frank messed up, he said, we know that. He's an idiot. So what do we do? So his excuses didn't work? Nope. Bill explained that they'd summoned Frank to a boardroom, but his story didn't add up, given all the warnings I'd sent him. Besides, there would have been no reason for him to keep emailing the insurer if he'd told me to sue. Once the file went to legal counsel, Frank's role was over. The company knew Frank was BSing them. So that's it, then? Bill said, we just lost a couple of $1,000,000? It's okay, I said, explaining that when I realized that Frank was going to mess up, I issued a claim against the insurer. Because I'd made Frank send me the proof of loss a while earlier, I had enough information that I could sue to preserve the cause of action. Not a great claim and is short on details, but good enough. You sued without instructions? Bill said. Lawyers aren't supposed to sue without instructions because if you do that, you're personally liable for whatever costs the other side incurs. It's a big deal to sue without instructions. Yup, I said, I sued without instructions. I pulled up a copy of the claim and emailed it to him as we spoke. It's a little rough, I said, but we can always amend. Thank God, Bill said, can I leave it with you? Of course, he could. The insurer was a sitting duck, and I knew I'd collect from them, no problem. A few days later, I got a call from another guy who worked for the client, a guy I didn't normally deal with. They had a situation and needed my help. I usually deal with Frank, I said, what's up? What was up was that Frank got called into another meeting, and they handed him a one-page letter, and then he put his little office things in a box, and security walked him past his coworkers to the elevator and escorted him downstairs to the parking lot. Bye-bye, Frank. He was too old to get another job, or at least, not a decent one. It was a life-changing event for Frank, but for me, he was just an anecdote, a cautionary tale that I tell young lawyers sometimes over beers, maybe too often, because I'm getting on in years and I have my favorite stories. I wasn't trying to get revenge on Frank, not at all, and I would have felt a bit sorry for him if he hadn't been trying to throw me under the bus. But the guy who replaced him was great and never nickel and dimed me, so it was all good in the end. What is the most terrifying experience you had in your own home? Last year met a girl who I fell in love with and we got engaged. She had 2 little girls who I love dearly. They are twins. We all moved into a house together in October of last year. Nothing too out of the ordinary happened. One morning she comes to me and tells me she's pregnant. She explained to me that with the twins she got postpartum very badly and explained how breastfeeding can make it worse. I said we could do formula for the baby. The added bonus of this is that I can help with nighttime feedings, it wouldn't be all on her. I would hate to see her have to deal with all of this alone, so I try and help wherever I can. Fast forward 10 months and the baby is here. It's a boy. As any father would be, I'm extremely stoked. Couldn't be happier. We keep him in a bassinet by the foot of our bed. When it's my fiance's turn to feed him, she prefers to bring him into our bed. I worry I may fall asleep, so during my turns I take him downstairs and lay on a beanbag and watch TikTok while he eats. The girls' bedrooms are across the hall from our room. The baby has a very distinct cry he uses when he's actually hungry and doesn't just want his pacifier back in his mouth. My fiancé calls it his pterodactyl scream. One night last week it was my turn to feed him around 3 a.m. I got up as tired as I was, sleepless, and made his bottle, then took him downstairs. The dog and the cats all followed me. I usually let the dog out to use the bathroom. I changed the baby's diaper and then got comfy on the beanbag with the baby next to me. Bottle in one hand, TikTok in the other, I let him drink away. He finished and fell asleep. I wasn't quite done with the TikTok I was watching, so I sat up and put his pacifier in. About a minute later I hear his pterodactyl cry come from upstairs. I was very confused and completely shocked. I just froze for a few seconds. I thought I must be really tired. I then put TikTok away, then looked down at my son, and just as I was about to stand up I heard the cry from upstairs again. There was no denying what I heard this time. I got my flashlight on my phone out and cautiously headed up the steps, trying to come up with a rational explanation, as I thought I was just hearing things that weren't there. Then I opened our bedroom door and my wife was sitting up wide awake. I asked her if she heard that and she said yes. I said it sounded like the baby, but it couldn't be because I had the baby. She suggested maybe one of the girls made the noise. I handed her the baby and went to check on them, both sound asleep. Both the cats, our dog, and our baby were all downstairs with me. So none of them made it. I was really freaked out at this point. I returned to our bedroom. My fiancé was putting the baby in his bassinet and lying down to go back to sleep. I whispered, "What was that?" and she just said, "Nope, we're not going to talk about it, pretend it never happened," and fell asleep. It's been about a week now, no other noises at night, but I don't rest too easy knowing something is there. I talked to a paranormal expert online and they advised I follow your girlfriend's lead. Don't talk about it in the house. Try going outside, maybe to a restaurant or at least far away from the property before speaking of it. He said he made that mistake once and it just got way worse. Whatever was in the house was not to be discussed in the house or else it would heighten its appearances. So as advised, we went to a nearby park where our kids were playing at the swing and had a serious discussion to follow the expert's orders. We continued to hear the cry here and there but simply acted as if it were nothing. We never spoke about it in the house again.
I gave support to my ex's mistress. Now I'm getting blamed for the situation. My ex did cheat with her but she was not aware at the time. I detached myself from the situation when she was made aware, with a couple of messages over Insta to her. Of course, I had some anger and resentment in me towards her, but I decided to text her. I told her cheaters don't change. If he did it to me, he'll do it to you. Let me know if you ever need to talk. I sent that message last September. This January I received a message that said I don't have anyone. He's the worst. Are you available? She came to me. She was pregnant. I allowed her to stay in the basement suite of my home, and 2 weeks later I helped her to end the pregnancy and encouraged her to start therapy. She was not on speaking terms with her family at all, not one bit. I helped her with the process of abortion and little did I know I would get attacked for this. We got along well enough that I wrote up a simple tenancy and she'd been staying for $500 a month since. No matter where you live, that's cheap, so she was very grateful for me. I am child-free, but I feel very strongly for her. In an oddly maternal way. I introduced her to my family. She's of a similar age to my youngest sister and they get along well. Recently, I've helped her apply to colleges. The issue started when the ex found out she aborted the pregnancy. Apparently, she told one of my sister's friends who is the sibling of my ex's closest friend. Word spread around and soon enough it was known that I helped her with it. He has since been harassing me on all socials. Calling me all the grotesque things that you can think of. Creating new socials to do so also. Once I block account, the next thing I know a different one is texting me insults. His mother called me to harass me for ending her grandchild's life because I'm a heartless woman who hates children because I'm child-free. She made sure to tell me that just because I want to be a useless woman, doesn't mean I need to destroy my ex's line. I thought I was doing this girl a favor, but for some reason, many people thought I had brainwashed her into making this decision. It started affecting my work also because recently my amazing boss retired and was replaced by a sniveling piece of garbage who was extremely conservative. He's seen the social media post that he made so everyone can know how much of a terrible person I am and has brought it up to me on lunch breaks. I wouldn't be surprised if he attempts to let me go in a sideways way for it. I've also noticed a few of my friends have pulled away, thinking of helping her out of spite now, and asking me why I got involved. I'm just tired. I'm not legally adept for my age, in all honesty, and I've been under a lot of stress and am struggling with my own mental health, and this is just a lot right now. And at the moment I'm glad it's mostly directed at me because apparently, he hasn't contacted her. And I'm worried about him contacting her. She's finally doing well. I've tried blocking them. He's made new accounts. Even his mother made a new one this morning, which prompted me to write this actually. Both of them to this day decide when they feel like insulting me. And as for work, my boss has made a lot of political remarks to me too, and they've just gotten worse instead of dying down. I tried to avoid him, but he seems to just bump into me more often lately. And our conversations always circle back to something in this realm, no matter how much I try to avoid it. So my ex contacted her yesterday when I told him I would not be entertaining his tantrum anymore after he contacted me through another account. She and I spoke at length about the issue and have decided to press charges. I also have some great news. Ever since my boss has been harassing me, I began applying to other jobs and one got back to me not too long, and it's for a significantly higher paying position at another company. So fingers crossed that the issue with my boss will be a non-issue soon. I hope I get to leave him in the past. I have also put my socials on the highest privacy as of this morning. I did check in with her because I did want to ask her and make sure she never felt like I influenced that decision about ending the pregnancy for her, and she said I just gave her perspective, and the only thing she's felt since the procedure is relief. I don't mind the idea of being a villain or a bitch, so long as it's aimed in the right direction. I don't mind being my ex's, but I didn't want to be that negative force in her life, you know? She's really a great girl and she deserves the happiness she seems to have found. And that's why I helped her from the beginning, because I knew she deserved better. I feel like I knew what I did was right, but in the thick of it, losing friends and being harassed about your choices really makes you question things. I've set up another much-needed appointment with my therapist too.
I slept with the wrong woman. I still can't believe it. My friend recently informed me that one of his coworkers asked him if he knew anyone who would be interested in her chronically single daughter. The woman apparently regarded my friend as a decent young man and figured he would most likely be friends with other decent young men. The reason the woman didn't ask my friend if he might be interested in her daughter was because my friend was in a relationship. My friend informed the woman that he might know a guy. Cue the part where I came in. My friend called me and asked if I would be keen to get to know his coworker's daughter. My first response was to request photos to get an idea of what the daughter looked like. My friend didn't have photos of the daughter, but he did have a name and surname for me to search online. I liked what I saw when I scanned through the daughter's social media. She was really attractive and seemed like fun. I made my friend aware that I was interested. My friend asked for my permission to share a few photos of me with his coworker, who was the mom, so she could share it with her daughter. I said sure. A few days later, my friend contacted me to share the feedback he received from his coworker. Based on my friend's feedback, the daughter was still in the dark about my existence because the mom suddenly decided that she first wanted to meet me in order to gauge if I would be good enough for her daughter. And just like that, I lost interest. I was in no mood to meet the mom to get vetted and thus stopped caring about the whole matchmaker thing. There were easier ways to meet girls without a middleman or a middle mom. I was on the verge of tapping out, but my friend, who was still fully invested for some reason, managed to change my mind and convince me to go through with it after reminding me of how long it's been since my last relationship. My meeting with the mom happened a couple of days ago. I could see where the daughter got her looks from. From the moment the mom opened her mouth and bombarded me with loaded questions about my life, I sensed something between us. I thought it was my imagination until my meeting with the mom continued in my bedroom. For the record, the mom established she was single prior to my meet entering the picture. I had no post-nut clarity regret when we were done having intercourse, but the same could not be said about the mom. She cut our cuddling sessions short and proceeded to get dressed as fast as possible. I asked her why she was leaving so soon after we had what I thought was good intercourse. She said her daughter was off limits from that moment onwards and asked if I understood what off limits meant. I said yes and asked the mom if she was off limits too or just her daughter. She looked at me like I was a kid asking his parent for a puppy before telling me that we were not compatible and therefore better off going our separate ways. I asked the mom if not compatible was a reference to the age gap between us. She laughed like she expected me to bring up the age difference. When I asked her to fill me in on what was so funny, she said she could literally list all the things that made us incompatible based on the answers I gave her when she was getting to know me and the experience she had getting to do me. I'm not going to lie, she was beginning to get under my skin at that point, so I challenged her to share at least 5 things that supposedly made us incompatible. She accepted the challenge and shared more than 5 things. This is what I remember from her list. I habitually bite my fingernails. I avoid the gym. I still look forward to Christmas presents from my parents. I'm oddly obsessed with koalas. I hate sushi. I never learned how to swim. I smoke flower. I'm friends with my ex. I travel to work using a skateboard. I struggle to parallel park. I'm too quiet during intercourse. I seem to think playing Rammstein during intercourse is the same as not being quiet. I was unable to make mom explode. I asked the mom what made her sleep with me if she had so many reasons not to. She said I kind of reminded her of the first boy she hooked up with in high school. I said, and? She said it was old feelings she had to get out of her system. I asked her if I was nothing more than a nostalgia FCK. She advised me not to put a label on what happened and to forget about her and her daughter forever. This post is proof that I'm struggling to forget. Not only did this woman leave me feeling used and a little insecure, but she's also avoiding my friend at work and now he's low-key blaming me for contributing to an uncomfortable working environment.
My insane mother-in-law forced me to get a DNA test. It's destroying my marriage. This whole situation is embarrassing and I am so done with it. I've been with my husband for 5 years now. His mom was always overwhelming and bold with her input on everything, to put it nicely. I genuinely think it's not fair to be mad at your partner for something he didn't do himself. He can't control what his mom does or say. But what's also not fair is not addressing it when I am clearly uncomfortable or upset and instead just talking me into brushing it off or going with it. I never nor would I ever have a back and forth with my mother-in-law. Just not worth barking at each other. I always kind of brush it off if it's a snarky comment or if it's a better way to do something in her opinion. I'll just tell her thanks for the suggestion but we are fine. It's actually true, the saying when you marry someone, you marry their family. I think the way to handle it is each spouse should keep his side of the family in line, for lack of a better way to say it. I deal with my parents and their shenanigans and I expected him to do the same. He never did. He always asks me to give her some grace. Well, it's hard when that person is insulting you. For a while now she has been making comments about how my son doesn't look like my husband when he was a toddler. Basically, she accused me of sleeping around. This, rightfully so, upset me. Sorry, my genes are strong, what do I tell you? I was short with my husband because he didn't address how out of pocket and disrespectful this whole thing is. It has been a week since my husband, well, Soon-to-be ex-husband told me that he would be doing a paternity DNA test. Not because he thinks that it's not his son, but to shut his mom up. Yes, exactly what you read. I don't know which one is worse, him accusing me of cheating or this. But all I know is this is audacious. I didn't cheat and I am not concerned one bit about the test results. I wasn't going to stop him from taking a DNA test or whatever, but I just know I don't want to deal with this any longer. I am looking for an apartment and I talked to a lawyer the day after he brought this DNA test thing up. And I've been acting more than normal since. We'll be getting the results in 2 days. I can't wait. He would be also getting divorce papers with that too. I know for a fact he won't see it coming. I tried my best to make this whole thing work and manage my relationship with my mother-in-law as gracefully as possible. But thinking about it, it's not just my mother-in-law that is the problem, but how he is handling things is also a problem. And a side note, I have never been more glad that I didn't leave my job when I got married. He makes more than enough to take care of the financial side of things. I thought I would get bored. I only have to be on site 2 days per week. Also, I really love my job in the company, so I didn't leave. Best decision I ever made. He is unreliable, to say the least. I know that divorce can be hard on kids, but I experienced the other side. Living with 2 parents who hated each other and violently fought almost all the time is as hard, maybe even harder. They thought that staying together would be good for me and my siblings. Newsflash, it wasn't. It was traumatizing, to say the least. I don't remember. I either read somewhere or maybe my therapist told me that when you fight with your spouse you shouldn't see it as me versus you. But more like, me and you versus the particular situation or problem on hand and try to figure it out. But it's really hard to do so when you start hating that person. I don't want my son to live like that because I just can't stand my husband anymore. I just don't respect him anymore, if that makes sense. I just see an unreliable man, and I know for a fact that our fights won't be the same as before. I would have said what a waste of 5 years, but I have a sweet and smart gremlin now, and having a child really pushes you to be better and to do better, so I can't complain. The day he was supposed to receive the results, I called my father-in-law and invited them to come over that evening. He was working when he got the results. He sent them to me and told me he would talk to his mother to finally put this to rest. I informed him that I had already invited them for this evening and I was just waiting for my apology before I left. I asked that he come home so we could talk before they came over. He called, and I basically told him that this is not working for me anymore. I've already talked to an attorney and filed for divorce. It might be more expensive than a paternity test, but it would be more effective in making his mother happy. He left work and came home. Long story short, we had a spectacular fight. He said that I am not thinking about my son and I am overreacting because it's not like he went behind my back. And if he knew that I was this upset, he wouldn't have done it. But he knew. We fought about it when he brought it up. He just didn't care. When I gave him the divorce papers, he said he's not signing anything and he'll ask his mother to apologize when his parents arrive and get done with this. Listen, I don't need him to sign it to get a divorce. It would only make things complicated, that's it. His mother said, she has nothing to apologize for. She wouldn't apologize for having suspicions. She didn't accuse me of anything and I can leave if I want to. So that's that. I did leave that night because I wasn't going to get an apology, and he didn't seem to understand that his reinforcing that it's okay for her to meddle is why I want a divorce in the first place. He eventually told his parents he'd be coming over from time to time to check up on them and not to bother coming over anymore until she apologized. She wasn't amused. She told me I was taking her son away and some thought he would take my son too. She is not someone that you can talk to, I'll tell you that much. It's like talking to a wall. All she knows is insulting or being passive-aggressive on a good day. We decided we were not getting a divorce. We talked the day after. He said I could always file for a divorce, but we should at least try couples counseling because he doesn't want to co-parent.